All right, welcome to Ask the Experts Part 3, Planning for the Future of eBooks. I am Jack Molisani, your moderator today. I'm the president of ProSpring Technical Staffing. I also produce the LavaCon Conference on Digital Media and Content Strategies. You can tweet and talk about us. My Twitter handle is @JackMolisani. Let's go ahead and start today. All right, Joe, introduce yourself and where you're broadcasting from.
Okay, thanks, Jack. It's Joe Gollner, broadcasting from Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. And I work with a company called Gnostics Research. Well, it sounds a bit grand, but it's really just myself and a team of about 5 developers that we work specifically in the area of, I guess, content management and enterprise content strategy.
Okay, welcome. Rahel.
Hi, I'm Rahel Bailie. Usually I'm in Vancouver, BC, but I am coming to you from a client site in London, England, and I run my own consultancy, intentionaldesign.ca, and work in the content strategy space, kind of the geeky side of content.
Okay. And Val.
Yes, hi, I'm Val Swisher, and I am in Silicon Valley right now, and I am the founder and CEO of Content Rules. We are a company that basically goes across the entire content lifecycle from strategy through content development and preparing content before translation.
Very cool. All right, at this point I would like to thank our sponsor, Data Conversion Laboratory, a market leader since 1981, converts, organizes, and creates electronic content and gets it ready to meet the needs of technology today and in the future. You can find them at dclab.com. Just to let you know, we are recording this session and you will be emailed a link tomorrow or shortly thereafter. We're going to start today with a few statistics and then move into predictions about the future of ebooks. We're also going to talk about some challenges and how companies can overcome those challenges, and then end with questions and answers. Because this is the 3rd session out of 3, we're going to leave ample time for questions. So Vincent is our administrator. He'll be taking your questions, and we'll get to them as many as we can as we go through. All right, some statistics. In the first quarter of 2011, Apple reported over 1 million iBooks downloaded. Then, same time a year later, income from all adult ebooks, that means books not for children, from all publishers passed 288 million, a 28.4% increase from the same period the year before. Then, in the second quarter of 2012, income from ebook sales surpassed hardcover sales for the first time in history, and that is in the U.S. market, and these statistics are from the Association of American Publishers. So, what's next? Let's look at the future of ebooks and where we are going. So, Joe, give me one of your predictions for the coming future of ebooks.
Sure. Certainly one of the things with the evolution of all the devices that we see out there, I would foresee that we're going to have a steep sort of improvement curve in the capabilities that are going to be coming with those devices. And that's going to be interesting because ebooks will be under more and more demand to provide enriched and enhanced capabilities, because people will be able to do more than just navigate through it. They will be able to interact with the content, and I think that's going to be a very interesting area.
Good. Rahel, you had mentioned something when we were talking earlier about what segments of the industry are pushing that enrichment. Talk a little bit about that.
I think that we're going to see this expanded use of ebooks because there's still a lot of companies that aren't using ebooks. It's not even on their radar, but they're going to start seeing how their competitors use them, for example, and then they will kind of jump on the bandwagon. So they're not the early adopters, but they're the mainstream. So you'll see things like for technical manuals or for catalogs or things like that that aren't necessarily a commercial use, but they're kind of a B2B use. So I think that's going to there's going to be an uptake in that.
Cool. Now, Val, you had mentioned something about education driving this train or bus. Val, you still with us?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Okay, we can hear you now.
Oh, okay, great. So yes, well, there's two things. One is I really want to go to Rahel's point about B2B ebooks and more companies jumping on the bandwagon, and we can also talk about the second one that you're referring to. I think that in order for there to be more B2B use of ebooks, we need to solve the problem of enterprise ebook distribution. If it's going to be a viable option for technical manuals and other types of content being delivered from company to company, or even within a company, say ebooks delivered to people in the field so they can take them with them on their iPads when they're doing repairs, we need to have an enterprise distribution channel that is separate from the iTunes store and Amazon. The notion that going out to Amazon to get an internal piece of documentation doesn't work. And while there is side loading, which is a method of uploading, putting your content on your tablet or other mobile device that doesn't go through that type of distribution, I think we really need to solve that problem. And I foresee it's a great business opportunity, somebody solving that problem. So, Joe, I don't know if you want to expand on that, but we can also move on to other.
Yeah, well, just briefly, I would chime in that on a couple of my current projects, particularly around legal material, certainly I've seen some very, very interesting applications that do just that, basically enterprise focused distribution channels, and then by virtue of being focused or deployed within an enterprise, really offering very powerful services and sort of very rich analytics, the ability for people to create working groups and collaboration teams around units of content. That I think there's a lot of potential there, and I call that really professional publishing, and I think it's a very exciting area.
Now, by publishing, do you mean people writing their own books or magazines or enterprise content as well?
In particular, I'm looking at enterprise content. So in this case, it's sort of the one example I'm currently looking at is material for forensic accountants of all people. So it's like everything from tax code through to case law through to working papers, and it's basically people creating and collaborating on new materials by interacting with a huge collection of material that's been published and very richly indexed and annotated. So it very much is enterprise focused.
And then how do companies need to address architecting their content if that's coming down the line? Joe, and then
talk
about that for a moment.
Sure. Well, it does definitely bring us to the doorstep of one of the key preparations that organizations need to be looking at is, getting around to what's been oft postponed, adopting XML and XML-enabled content and publishing technologies. Because what I just described, none of that works unless we have really quite intelligent source content in which to build those new services.
Now, Rahel, you had mentioned about when do organizations adopt new technologies, just because they're fun?
Oh, goodness, no. Most organizations won't adopt a technology unless they're actually experiencing some serious pain. Either it can be because they've missed a deadline, or the production costs are getting too high doing their cutting and pasting, or the cutting and pasting has resulted in some discrepancy and now there's a lawsuit, or it can be any of those kinds of things, or the competition is kicking their butt, and then they will start to say, okay, so what do we do, and how are we going to do this? And usually there are a few false runs at a problem because they will try to do it the way they know how, with the tools that they have, with what's familiar, and then when they see that it's not really working, then they'll look to see, okay, how are the big boys doing it, and they'll kind of grit their teeth and bite the bullet. Unfortunately, that's the way it works.
When your only tool is a hammer, all problems resemble a nail approach?
Exactly.
So, Val, give us a little bit of your take on the actual physical formats that the data needs to be stored in and what's coming down the line on that.
Well, I think that what Joe was saying is where things are going. Companies need to implement XML solutions so that content is easy to reuse, to grab, to reformat, to put into whatever type of content asset they need, and then have it delivered in whatever format the customer has. Right now, if we keep all of our content locked up in Microsoft Word documents or even InDesign files, then we do not have the flexibility that we need to be able to effectively address all of the different types of content, including eBooks. I mean, this goes beyond eBooks, but we need robust component content management systems. We need proper taxonomy. We need all of the bells and whistles, if you will, of structured authoring and of being able to reuse content and then being able to produce those content assets in whatever format we want, whether it's a .mobi file or it's an iBook or whatever it is that our target audience needs.
I think I want to add to what Val is saying, because there's a lot of discussion out on the web about mobile first. Instead of thinking about the web, think about mobile. And if you think about but it's not even mobile first, because you don't know what next year is going to be. Is it ebook first or mobile first or tablet first or whatever first? And really what it is content first. So if you do your content right from the beginning, then you can use it in any recipe, if you will. You know, you can output it to any device or any size of screen if you've configured your content right from the beginning. And so I think that's a big shift in thinking, and people aren't there yet, but they'll have to get there soon, because that's going to be the key to, you know, meeting their business goals.
Joe, to add to that, what do companies need to do in either looking at their legacy content and getting it, maybe using somebody like DCL to convert it, versus just drawing a line in the sand and going, okay, we'll just have to do it differently going forward?
Sure. Well, as having worked with DCL in the past, I know we always follow a very logical process. One is, you have to look at your holdings, your legacy holdings, with a view to determining, which assets really do need to be brought forward into sort of the brave new world. And very often we put a bunch of stuff in the, we're going to draw a line there and not bring it forward. The fact is, though, there will be an awful lot of material that organizations have that in a legacy form that it's just unrealistic to pretend that you can draw a line and continue to treat it as sort of the old jalopy that you only bring out at the springtime. Like, you really do have to go back and rescue some of this content. And once you've done that due diligence to determine what high priority legacy content really does need to be converted, and then do the extra work of determining, to Rahel's point, do the engineering work to think through how should the content be structured so it can support all the different needs of the future, then you have a very strong case to undertake a conversion of those resources.
Now I want to ask all three of you in turn, but we'll continue with Joe. We've all talked about the enhancements that enhanced ebooks can offer the reader that just a flat PDF cannot. how do you go about planning a migration where you go back and enrich some of that content? Start with Joe.
Well, yeah, in that exact process, normally we'll go back, and you'll find that even in the context of legacy formats, people will have invested huge amount of effort, say, in technical illustrations or supporting models. And so you can see where they even where, let's say, print was the primary delivery method, that they put a lot of effort into enhancing the content. So you typically create a first level conversion to sort of salvage whatever has been done in the past, ideally into an editable format, some sort of two-dimensional illustrative vector form. But then you also flag and say, looking forward to new formats, new delivery channels, this is probably where we're going to want alternative representations, animations, 3D, build sequences, and there's all sorts of things we can now do. And typically, where past enrichment was done is a good indication of where it'll be needed in the future.
Cool. Rahel, you were talking earlier about personalizing the enhancements based on the reader's learning style.
Yes. So if you think about, and there have been some articles out on the web that said, you know, are ebooks revolutionary, or is it just kind of a little bit of a change? And so that really started me thinking about what would change. And so when you think about people that have a visual learning style, a kinetic learning style, an audio learning style, so you have people who want to read and people who need to, you know, kind of get their hands on the material and work with it. And so ebooks will allow people, it's almost like a make your own adventure book, that you can allow people to jump off and learn things in different ways. So when some people learn from theory and then looking at specifics, other people learn better by looking at a specific example and then generalizing to the theory. So you can allow for those things easily in an ebook, because you can you know, fiddle with the experience, the user experience. And I think as more designers get involved, if you think about the book Elements, which was really the creators, all they wanted to do was make it sexy to learn the periodic table. And they ended up creating this quite elaborate book where you can read about the element, you can spin things around, so you look at 3D objects and, you know, quote unquote spin them around. You can see examples of it. You could go out to you know, an external source and learn more about the technical side of it. So there are many ways you can interact with the material. And I think that as we go, and designers who are very creative, they bring that creative approach, there will be a lot of different aspects that get incorporated into ebooks.
Now, Val, you had some thoughts about 3D and ebooks and the coolness factor. What about that?
Yes, well, I think that the devices that we have now, the typical devices that people use, really at the moment, the iPad and the iPad mini are the devices of choice for cool and for 3D and for modeling and interactive. And I think that, as Joe actually said in the very first comment he made, devices are going to have to improve, and they're going to have to really get beyond just this notion of only reading, because I think that when we can really take advantage of all of the different modalities that we have available for the different learning types, then that's when we'll see ebooks really start to take off. And one of the things that I've been thinking about quite a bit is how ebooks really represent a convergence of a lot of things that across an enterprise we've already been doing. So for example, we can take a training course and make it web-based. and media-based. And we can take that training course and we can remove parts of it and just pull certain information and make it into a sales demo so that now there's a media-based sales demo. Well, we can do the same thing with pulling different pieces of media and putting them into an enhanced interactive ebook. So in some cases, when we look at legacy data, we're going to be looking at content that goes across multiple pieces of the organization, multiple business units, multiple departments, and a lot of that expertise is already available to companies. It's just in places that they probably didn't look before.
So Joe, let's take that as an assumption that there's that functionality is there. It's cool. We should be doing it. What do organizations need to do as far as tools and standards to get from where they are now to doing that on a routine basis?
Yeah, on the preparation side, certainly there will be no substitute to sort of jumping in and starting to explore these things. And in jumping in and starting to work with the intelligent content technologies, so technologies that can really work with XML, modular XML, smart media resources. The point in jumping in is to start building the skill set. You know, there are so many publishers out there who are really struggling, and that they you know, a lot of what we're talking about strikes them as just mysterious. It's so different than the world of publishing, and this goes both for commercial publishing and sort of enterprise professional publishing. And the fact is that they're going to need to jump in. They're going to have to look for training opportunities, diversification opportunities, so that they demystify some of this, because we do have, you know, decades of experience behind us now. And you know, it means the technology is now pretty solid, and there's a lot of experience out there using that technology. And like with DCL, a lot of experience getting your content from where it is today to where you really wish it were. All of this can be tapped, but you know, really, publishers have to start jumping in and you know, consciously trying to build the skills and their comfort level with these new tools.
Before we go on, you use the term intelligent content. Can you define that for the audience?
Sure. I'll use my shortest version. Basically, intelligent content is content that has been intentionally designed so that we can use, you know, so that it's meaningful to people, but it's also processable by machines. In other words, it really does leverage open standards so that we can deliver the best possible information experience to users, but at the same time, for the owner, deliver the best possible savings and efficiencies. And really, leveraging technology is the name of the game.
Rahel, from a business process standpoint, how are companies justifying putting the effort into making content intelligent enough to increase that user experience?
Well, it depends. It's the standard consultant response. Depending on what they want to get out of their content, how they want to leverage it, they might justify it in a few ways. So one is personalization, because maybe they're in a business where people expect personalized content, and it may be personalized for an audience type, but it may be personalized by a problem that they're having, or it could be you know, a localization and so on. It could be that that they need to, it could be for compliance reasons because they're in a regulated industry and so on and so forth. It could be, there's so many reasons, but you know, those are a couple of the bigger ones. They just want to do things more efficiently, not so much because of the efficiency aspect, but because of what the efficiency brings. It's either faster time to market, or it's they can extend their reach, extend their capacity, or again, the whole accuracy and compliance. It could just be that their employees are in so much pain that there's high turnover, and so they want to bring in some efficiencies that way.
And I know this is a webinar series on eBooks, but it kind of sounds from all the panelists that we're really looking at multiple ways of delivering content based on platform and audience type. Val, what are you seeing when companies are making the decision of how to deliver content?
Well, what I'm seeing is that the companies that are ahead of the pack or catching up to the pack are understanding that there really is a demand for customized content, that on the user side, on the reader side, or the watcher side, the listener side, people don't want to have to get through 200 pages of content to find the instructions on how to install a spark plug or something like that. They want to be able to get to exactly what they need when they need it in the form that they need it. So I'm finding that more of my customers, even in the mid-size space, which is good, it's not just the behemoths, are really starting to evaluate reusable, intelligent content now. They have fewer resources, and they know that they need to reuse content, and they know that once they put it in a format that's easy to reuse and easy to grab, then they can provide their customers with exactly what the customer is looking for and really deliver what they've promised to the customer.
So, Joe, expanding on what Val just said, what do companies need to be investing in across the spectrum to do that, to deliver these kind of user-optimized content experiences?
Sure. Well, really, I sort of rolled it under sort of intelligent content technologies, but it means things like component content management systems, systems that are optimized for helping you manage, modular, well-profiled, metadata-rich objects that a process can bring together very, very quickly, dynamically and on the fly, sort of on-demand answers. And then that, that sort of on-demand type of solution presumes you have very, very intelligent publishing processes, so that based on determining a few things like who the users are, what kind of tasks they're trying to do, where they are located, and other factors, can basically make an intelligent request to the repository saying, give me these pieces and I'm going to generate it into maybe an ebook that's going to work exactly right on the specific device that they have. They're on this particular HTC phone, and I'm going to give them exactly what they need in exactly the way that's going to look properly on that form factor. So it really means adopting that complete tool chain to allow you to do on-demand delivery of information.
But having the best tool set isn't going to mean you're going to be able to get there if part of your content development process is not authoring those meta tags. Rahel, from a content strategy standpoint, where in the development process do you build in putting in that metadata so the content can be reused and optimized for each user?
Oh, that's the million-dollar question. So it's as far upstream as you can. One of the things is looking at the content types, and when I say content types, I'm not talking about content genres, if you will, but the actual technical types of content that you have, and then saying, okay, is this what we want to have in the new order of things, or what do we want to have? And then figuring out how to configure that content and what the tags need to be and so on so that you can apply them later. And it shouldn't be a one-time thing. It should be one of those things that you revisit. If it were a document, I would say it's a living document. So this is something that you need to always kind of keep an eye on. But what I see happening is that people want to bring a content strategist after when the system is just about ready to roll out, and they want you to do some some magic, and they get very disappointed when you say, well, you know, now we have to work on these pieces at this stage. You know, it's at this stage and it's really kind of too late, and we should have been working on it before.
Val, from what companies are looking for in talent to do these kind of initiatives, are they looking for content strategists, or are they looking for writers who can do this, or are they actually looking for some other skill set to make these things possible?
That's a good question. You know, companies now are looking more for people who understand the full breadth of content rather than are focused just on a single piece of content creation. What I'm seeing in my customer base is that everybody creates content now. So you've got people, you know, all over the world in every department creating different pieces of content, and the people who really understand content are tasked more with sorting through that content, even curating that content, and then hopefully the strategy is in place, as Rahel just said, in applying the right tags or the metadata and applying the overall strategy to the content. And one of the things that I keep noticing time and again is that customers don't understand necessarily that when you go into a structured environment and you want to be able to grab reusable components, you actually have to think differently about the way you create those components. So if you are lucky enough to still have, say, a technical writing team, they cannot sit down and start at page 1 and write an installation guide that goes all the way through to page 300 anymore, because they need to be thinking about the fact that their content is going to be reused. In fact, probably pieces of their content already exist elsewhere, and they need to really revisit the entire process of creating that content with reuse in mind. I had a customer recently say to me, oh, well, we implemented XML and we just thought all that stuff would be taken care of. We didn't realize that we actually have to change the way we write the content. And I said, well, no, unfortunately, unfortunately, it doesn't work that way.
Okay, good. Before we open the floor to questions, let's circle back to predictions. Specifically on the readers of ebooks, on the devices themselves, Joe, what do you see coming down the line on those?
Well, picking up on the one example I was using of professional publishing of sort of a tax material, as entertaining a subject as that is, one of the things that really stood out in that project, and it was sort of it's one of my hobby horses, is the importance of very persistent permalinks, we'll call them, like basically persistent identifiers in the content. Now, that's back to some of the things we've been touching on now about thinking through your content differently, designing it with a sort of a complete life cycle. Why this is important is as people can interact with the material using their readers, you know, adding annotations, creating discussions, you know, spinning off particular groups to sort of specialize in a problem. All of this, if it connects to a sort of a persistent and globally unique identifier on a sort of a set of paragraphs, for example, then we can roll that all back into the enterprise and create something that's much closer to an enterprise knowledge base. And you can also see how this extends out over the world, as it were, even for Harry Potter, that being able to have discussions that sort of quickly map onto other discussions by virtue of being able to reference the content in a persistent way and in a common way. I think the more work that we do on that as an industry and as a sort of a body of practice, the more things that will become possible. And with one of my projects was for a very large publisher. We worked very hard to make sure that even as you went to eBooks, your paper page references still made sense. So if somebody had a paper book and they said, hey, look at page 11, you could actually go into a view of your ebook so you could see page 11, and therefore we could straddle the ebook and the paper world, and people could have a discussion. And these are very powerful, and this is an area that it can be done. It is being done more and more, and I think when we do it, a lot of interesting things open up.
I have a question on something you said. You mentioned a couple times having persistent content and persistent references. Is that the page numbers you're talking about, or something else?
Yeah, normally it's sort of buried. It's basically it's a unique universal identifier, usually some big ugly number. But what it means is that if you on your reader, and we'll use that, if you're on a Kindle and you add an annotation, then a user who's on an iPad somewhere reading the same book should, if all the stars align, be able to see and interact with your annotations. In other words, the way that you have added, this paragraph is particularly important, then regardless of media, we can always sort of bring people's conversations together based on what they're talking about. And my example of the page numbers is we basically map these page number breaks to these kind of identifiers so that we can help people facilitate discussions around the content.
Cool. Rahel, as far as future of ebooks and platforms and content, what do you see?
So, for my wrap-up comment, I want to go build a little bit on what Val said and a little bit on what Joe said. And what I would say is that the progression of ebooks will happen as quickly as the people who have the skills and talents upgrade their skills to be able to do it. So as you can see, we have a panel here. I come from a tech writing background. Joe, I don't think, has ever been a tech writer. Val may have been for a brief period of time, if I remember correctly. But really what it comes down to is you've got people here who are coming from different backgrounds who really get it. And so, why am I in London? Because not because somebody wanted to import a Canadian and as a feel-good project. It was because they felt that they couldn't find local talent. So as the numbers of people who get involved in the technical side of content increase, then there will be those kind of aha moments where, oh yeah, and I can do this, and I can manipulate it this way, and we can do that too. And so it's important, I think, for ebooks, the adoption of ebooks and well, not so much the adoption by consumers, but the adoption by corporations is going to depend on having in-house talent that knows how to do it. And so if you can embrace that, the geeky side of content, if you will, the technical side of content, to understand what makes it tick under the hood, you're in a very enviable position. You'll be in great demand, and that will kind of, self-perpetuate.
Val, to continue that thought, there seems to be three kind of different skill sets in this whole equation. One is the coming up with the architecting, the information architecture content strategy. One is the person who likes getting into the XML code and implementing that in whatever tool that you have chosen. And the third is the people who are developing the content. Do you see those as three completely different skill sets? Can they be done by one person? What are you seeing from what companies are looking for?
So they are three different skill sets. Being able to look at an entire company corpus and develop an architecture for it is a skill set unto itself, and clearly coding and writing XSL transforms and this sort of thing is a skill set unto itself, and then the writing is a skill set unto itself as well. There are some people out there who I know and I work with who are capable of doing all three things. It's rare in my experience to find somebody who is equally good at coding as they are at writing. They exist. What I'm finding from my customers, though, is that they have either incorrect notions or they don't really understand that the writer isn't the coder, or that the writer isn't the architect, or that the coder isn't the architect. They don't understand that these really are different parts of expertise that go together. So my customers are always looking for the one-stop shop, the one-person shop, if you will, that can do it all. And those people exist, but I don't find a lot of, say, technical writers running out to enhance their coding skills. There are some, but people tend to stay in their professional niche, and I think that there are areas where people can start crossing boundaries to become more well-versed at these other pieces of the puzzle.
Okay, good. Now, to remind the audience, we are going to take questions. We're going to press on if you guys don't ask specific questions, because God knows these panelists have many things they want to say. So go ahead and type your questions to Vincent, and in the meantime, I am going to be asking each of the panelists, when it comes to identifying the skill sets, Joe, where should a company start if they want to if they're starting from scratch and they want to get to eBooks? Where do you even start?
Well, I guess personally, what springs to mind is engaging, some third parties, independent counsel, so a consultant or a specialized integrator to help move things forward. But in doing so, right from the get-go, I would strongly encourage the idea that you have your own people jumping in with a view that every step of the way, when you're engaging, specialist support, that you're working closely with them so that you are building your own internal knowledge base. It's fundamental. This publishing technologies today and the intelligent content tool set and the techniques and the sort of the mindset involved here are now so important that you really do have to make this part of the fabric of your new organization, and that means getting your team involved. And it'll probably be the number one challenge, is getting people to jump in and experiment with things that are really very new, and you have to create an environment where they feel they have at least one sort of a safety harness on, and that they can sort of learn by doing.
Okay, cool. Vincent, has anything come through yet that we want to take up, or should we press on with the panelists?
There was one question about when Joe was speaking earlier about what does it take to actually become ready to prepare yourself for the future of ebook publishing, and someone had asked if he could describe the skill set that he was talking about, where you were building the skill set to prepare for that.
Okay, well, I think I would go back to what Val was saying, and the question that Jack framed was that there are definitely different specializations at work, and probably the most important lesson as we move to this brave new world is that it takes a village to succeed. We need information architects, UX designers, and we need typographers. We need content creators, media people who can make things that can be added as these enriched components. And you need the specialist expertise around the tools and the standards being used. So those really are too much to be found in one person, and I think that we're found in one person, it's not particularly useful. We need a full team to be engaged in interacting on these different problems and approaching each project in a new team focused. So it was one of the things I spoke about at the last LavaCon conference, is sort of the need now for what I called integrated content teams, and intentionally sort of staging our projects so that we bring all of these different sort of disciplines to bear as early in the project as possible, so that everybody knows how their piece of the puzzle fits. And if we do that, then the content creators understand that they're not just writing page 10 of a 300-book manual, and the metadata designers at the very beginning of the project know that they have to think through discoverability questions in many different scenarios. So I think this is the driving force today.
So to clarify something, if a company hasn't yet adopted a mobile strategy, what's the best way to get started? You're not going to go out, and the reason I throw up this next slide is that going out and hiring content strategists and typographers, and there's a certain budget that has to go with that. So at what point do you decide, what kind of mobile strategy am I going to adopt? Is it the low, medium, or high? Where does a company even start? You mentioned bringing in a non-partial third party, but even you have to build a business case for that.
Yeah, so I'll touch on it very briefly, but yeah, this is always a challenge, and I tend to like the idea of identifying a small initial undertaking, which in a very short period of time you can sort of frame a quick strategy, get some quick input from trusted sources, and then have an experiment. In other words, look at a first publication to explore the area, to get all the way through to customer feedback. And the more quickly you can do that kind of iteration, the faster the team will start to learn.
Rahel, to expand on what Joe just said, is it a valid strategy, for lack of a better term, to bring in a content strategist to do a content audit, to see who their audiences are, and then offer the client what it will take to get there from here?
It depends. I find myself saying that a lot.
Every answer you give with, it depends.
It's true. It's true because, saying content strategist is like saying a doctor. So, it's like, I need a doctor, and you bring in an eye doctor, and it turns out you have a problem with your appendix. It's not really going to be helpful, right? So do you bring in a content strategist? Possibly, probably. You need to have the right kind of content strategist. Or it could be somebody who's, specializing in kind of some data, but, you have to be careful, again, with the data people, because they have to understand the nature of content. So you need to bring in someone, whoever that's called. So let's put the titles aside, but someone who really understands the nature of content. Because by saying it's a mobile strategy, you're not talking about content first, then you're talking about mobile first. So, it really, you have to just kind of stop and think. So what I see sometimes happening is that I don't want to think about it, so bring in this person because they have that title. And that's the wrong way to do it. We need someone who can think about content in this way. So who do we know, or who can we find who thinks in content of that way? So if you were to, so Joe and I would be considered perhaps competitors, although, I look up to Joe as being way notches above me. But he's, you would look at what he does and you would look at what I do, and, you might choose me over him or him over me depending on what problem you're trying to solve, because we don't solve the same kind of problems necessarily.
Would you say that, and granted, I've got a slightly vested interest in this question, in having attendees go to events like LavaCon, Intelligent Content, Content Strategy Workshops, listen to the speakers, and find someone that way, go, yes, that's the type of person we need to come in and help us with our project?
Definitely, definitely. Because that's how you're going to learn how sometimes what comes out of conferences is that you identify something and you go, that's it, that's the answer. I remember going to a conference many years ago and seeing someone demonstrate a content management system and going, that's what we need. I didn't even know what one was, but I recognized, this is almost 20 years ago, but having recognized that's exactly what we need. And then, becoming fascinated with content management systems and learning how they worked and so on and so forth. But I also learned what kind of people work on the content management systems. Then I knew what to look for as well. So it's an excellent way of kind of learning more about what you might need and then finding the right people who can help you.
And it's also discovering what you don't know that you don't know.
Exactly.
All right. I'm going to jump in here. Vincent, we have another question.
Yeah. About, oh, okay. So all three have mentioned something about a content management system. So does that mean that pretty much in order to prepare for the future, you need to prepare for multiple channel delivery?
I'm going to jump in and say something first, which is that if you have any amount of content, so if you've got 20 pages, you're not going to need a content management system. But if you have any kind of serious amount of content, you need some sort of technology to manage it, because you just can't keep up without a content management system. There's the idea of managing all this stuff in an Excel spreadsheet. At some point you run out of time or you run out of people, and so you have to kind of mitigate somehow.
So definitely, if you're translating your content, it makes sense to have a content management system. What if you're not translating your content into multiple languages? Rahel, answer that one too.
Yes, definitely. And I have actually a case study in the book, my book that's coming out next month, about a company that works only in English, and what drove them to a content management system was the fact that they were managing all of their content in an Excel spreadsheet, and it got to the point where either it was hire another person or use a technology. And when they used the technology, they found that it reduced the workload so much that they could increase their capacity incredibly. They had savings of like $250,000 within that first year just from kind of savings in looking for content, finding it, figuring out where it was all used, not having to manage the spreadsheet. So you can get a lot of bang for your buck in just, it's the difference between riding a bicycle or taking a plane. You just get there a lot faster.
Joe, was it your session at LavaCon where you were mentioning that if you're spending X amount of your time on formatting, then you're doing it wrong, you're wasting money?
That could well have been me, yes. Yeah. Certainly, as we move to standards-based intelligent content, among the areas of savings in terms of time and frustration is redirecting a lot of people's time away from fiddling with formatting to the content itself, and then being able to handle and refine formatting using automated tools, which of course is the only answer that's feasible when we're trying to hit 3,000 some odd mobile device form factors, as well as sustaining cross-platform support on the web and a myriad of other challenges. So moving to automation is now the only way you can survive, particularly with eBooks.
All right, Val, we're getting ready to wrap this up. We're going to have one more question, but first I wanted to ask you about the return on investment, because obviously there's cost savings, but is there not also sources of potential revenue by publishing your documents in ebook format?
Well, sure there is. There are sources of revenue in terms of putting together deliverables that customers will pay for, so other types of information. There are other sources of revenue by exploring additional topics and providing customers with that type of information. I think that it's really a combination of tremendous ROI that you get from putting a structured authoring system in place and a content management system in place, and then being able to address all of your customers' needs and being able to really meet them. I think that the more we automate and reuse, the more we'll save, and the more types of deliverables that we can provide, the more potential revenue sources we can generate.
Cool. All right, Vincent, what was that last question, and then we're going to wrap this up?
The last one was kind of more of a hypothetical kind of thing. Do you foresee a universal ebook store emerging at all within the market with all the different formats, you know, EPUB, Mobi, iBooks, and Kindle Format 8, and all of the other smaller formats? Like, do you actually foresee multiple devices all supporting all or just one similar format?
All right, Joe, before I have you start with the first answer, we kind of talked about this briefly at the top of the call about the challenges of having and publishing those multiple formats for multiple audiences and multiple language. So what do you see as far as the future of ebooks and how people are actually going to acquire them?
Yeah, it definitely is one of those great quotes, you know, predictions are difficult, especially about the future. And in this particular case, there is such a latitude, or such really a desperation amongst the various owners of channels to maintain their commercial positioning. Moving to or seeing a universal single store, as it were, or venue is difficult to see. You know, that said, you know, there isn't a huge amount of technical difference between the different tools beyond their rights management software, and that's a whole other kettle of fish. But if we could have at least some coordination, or at least maybe even just a venture that says, you know, that they can read and interact with all the formats and play by the rules set by the different channel owners. And it may require regulatory intervention, where, as there's already been pressure on some of the publishers and on some of the channels, the regulatory bodies may come in and say you have to have a minimum level of interoperability so that the consumers are protected. And I'd be right in line helping them there.
Okay, Rahel, 30 seconds, go.
I think that at some point, and it won't be in the immediate future, but down the line, we will have a kind of the way music is all, you know, MP3 or MP4, because it's just the market demands it, that at some point, you know, the books will be published in enough venues anyways that it doesn't really matter. So, you know, I know that right now we're going through on our own book production. It's like, okay, we're creating a Kindle format and an iTunes format and a this format and that format. So if you can get them anywhere, why not just have one format that all of the vendors use? But as Joe said, there's a lot of kind of posturing and positioning, so it'll take a while to get to that aha moment for the industry.
Got it. And Val, what do you see from a staffing support viewpoint on the future of ebooks?
Oh, I think that anyone who calls himself a technical writer now who does not understand structured authoring, does not understand XML, better get on the bandwagon, because it's definitely coming. And those people who really want to up the ante can really start looking at architectures and other aspects of structured content, whether it's creating style sheets or coding or whatever. I think that I'm noticing that the days of just being a tech writer sitting with your unstructured FrameMaker software are coming to a rapid end.
Understood. All right, and we are out of time, so you have our contact information. Feel free to contact any of us. Thank you, panelists. Thank you, DCL, for sponsoring this. Everybody, drive safe out there and have a great day.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you.